Hi, and welcome to the Android video series. We want to talk today about an intent service. An intent service is essentially started the same way as a service. We can see here we're using start service in the activity that starts the service, and we're starting the service with an intent. The difference is that an intent service is a service that runs within its own thread, and when it's done running within that thread, it will stop itself. So I want to look first at the service itself. I've called this service sleeper.java because all it's going to do is sleep for a number of seconds and then fire up a toast, and then it will be over. So class sleeper extends intent service rather than extending a regular service. I have a parameter here, or a property long number of seconds, and then I have a constructor. And an intent service requires that we have a no-arg constructor, that we pass the name of the service or the name of the class up to super, so that it can get itself started. Intent services also have two methods: onHandle intent and onDestroy. OnHandle intent needs to handle the intent that the intent service is going to handle. So an intent service really is a kind of a cheap, simple way to set up a separate thread of execution and do something and then return a result. So I've got an intent, and that intent probably has some extras in it. In this case it does. It has that long number of seconds. I set seconds to be get extras, get long, with the value of seconds, and we'll look at where we put that in the activity when we set it up. And then milliseconds is seconds times 1,000, of course, or millis. And then anytime we try to use sleep on a thread, and we're talking about this thread, anytime we try to use sleep, we need to put it in a try-catch block. Here we don't have a finally clause, but that's fine. All we're going to do when we catch an interruption or catch an exception is print a stack trace, and that's fine. In production code we would do something else. All we're doing here is sleeping the number of milliseconds that is 1,000 times the number of seconds that we pass in our extra. On destroy, we need to call up through to supers on destroy, and then we make a toast. And this just says slept 5 seconds or slept 12 seconds or whatever, and then we show it. And that's it for our service. So it's really actually very simple. We extend intent service rather than extending a service, and then the intent service will run its onHandle intent code in a separate thread of execution than the main thread. So if we look at our main activity, we see that we have onCreate, and this is completely normal. There is nothing odd about onCreate at all. We just have a layout. We have strings XML in our values folder. We have a manifest in which we have declared our service as just a regular service, because it is. It's a subclass of service. We have the name. It's sleeper, because this is dot sleeper, and this is sleeper.java. So everything is the same. And even in our activity, it's the same. But the only difference is, in the activity, we don't have to explicitly stop the service. The service, because it's an intent service, runs in a separate thread, and when it is done doing whatever it's going to do, it closes itself. It stops itself. So here is start service, and start service is going to be triggered by a button, and here it is, in activity_main.xml. So start service, we get the result of the edit text, sleep time, by finding its view by ID, and we've done this a couple of hundred times now, so we know how this works. And then we set long seconds to sleep, and we parse out the value as a long that is the text in that edit text. So we get the text, convert it to a string, and parse that out as a long. And we're using the parse long method of the long class, which is a wrapper around a primitive long. And then we set up our intent, main_activity.this and sleeper.class, and then we put that extra called seconds. The key is seconds, and the value is the long seconds to sleep that we got before, and then we start the service. And that's it. It's very simple. Remember, just as any service, we need to declare the service in the manifest, as we just saw, and then we start it as a service rather than starting it as an activity. So let's run this and see how it works. So we're launching. We see logcat up, and here we go. So let's put in a number of seconds. Let's say 5, and we'll say start service. And there we go. We slept 5 seconds. Now, if we had slept 5 seconds on the main thread, that's kind of our threshold time. If we had slept the main thread for 5 seconds, we may have gotten an ANR, an application not responding error. Certainly, if we sleep the application for something like 7 seconds, and let's do that and say start service again, this would certainly have generated an ANR because you're blocking the main thread of execution. But here, since we're running in a separate thread, we're running in an intent service, it sets up a separate thread, and then 7 seconds later, approximately, it puts up that toast. So here we go again, and 7 seconds. And there we are, slept 7 seconds. So an intent service is exactly like a service. We set it up like a service. We subclass intent service rather than service, and we use the onHandle intent method. Pass in the intent, get the extras out, do whatever we want to with them for as long as we want to. And then the intent is done. It goes through its onDestroy method, and it's great. It's a separate thread. It's nice and clean. Easy to do. There you go. Thank you.